Automotive Capitalist. I'm your host, DJ Flores. With me, of course, thank goodness, as always, my coach and yours, hopefully, Coach Stacey B. Coach, I know you're on remote, so guys, be warned, you might drop in and out. He's having some connection issues. But Coach, how's it going? And where are you at now? What assignment are you on now?
This is a kind of a fun assignment. My daughter, she graduated, got a couple of degrees from James Madison University, and was invited back as a guest lecturer. And so she was going to be alone, so I made the trip. So she's out talking to some nice graduate students, and I'm working from the hotel. And we've had a couple of days just kind of hanging out together. So it's been fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
And a proud dad moment. Yeah, proud dad moments. That's good.
Yeah.
How about you? What's happening back at home base?
Oh man, it's been crazy. I got to give a shout out to Steve Spiro. He'll hopefully be on soon, but he sent me his new book, The Tao of the Master Connector. Amazing dude, amazing book. Besides that, really just low key, nothing too crazy going on, but nice weather. We're enjoying. Obviously, I think it's like almost 70 today, so it's kind of nice to have that weather again. Oh, thank goodness. I think the cold is finally gone.
Well, it was even here in the mountains, it was 67 or so yesterday, and so we were just kind of hanging out and doing a few easy hiking trails because at 7 months pregnant, we can't be too risky with her. But it was nice.
Yeah, that's like perfect. That's perfect hiking weather for an easy trail. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, so Coach, I can't wait to Felix. So how we got introduced? I think, like he said, it was a social Saturday. So guys, don't take advantage of the LinkedIn world of networking and of networking. Again, shout out to my networking group. So I had my 10-minute presentation today. It was so much fun. We had so many amazing guests. So it's fun to always meet a lot of new people that show up to the meeting and first time like BNI people. So had a few of those. Younger guys started a roofing company and first time in BNI, and like, man, yeah, you found the right home. Just start networking a little bit more. You'll be surprised how this will skyrocket your roofing business, and before you know it, you don't even need much marketing. But I think that's where a lot of people get confused with that. And so I'll have to share this with you, Coach. I don't know if I shared this yet. So my grandpa was big with magic, and so he had this metal tin container that had all of his tricks in. And one of his go-to tricks was always the cigarette in the handkerchief. And the way he used it was with the same way they make other things disappear. I won't give away the secret for anybody who's still amazed by that. But and so I loved that trick as a kid forever and wondered. And so I think, and I got to give, as I keep kind of replaying back through my life, like, why am I always so curious? Why do I always think there is an answer? Like we always, a lot of people just come up to a tough thing and they're like, nope. And I'm like, no, there's a way. There's a way. And I think it's him, because I'll tell you, he used to go to the magic store to buy the trick, to then figure out how to make the trick himself. So he would then copy the trick after he figured out how it worked. So I thankfully, out of having a huge family, they thought of me to give me that tin, or at least my parents did. So they took it and they gave it to me. So I have it. So I use, actually, for marketing, that example of the trick with a yellow. Here, I'll pull it out. I have it in my pocket. But so with this, and I said, marketing there is no trick to it. It's not something you did. It's something you do, and it's something you constantly have to do. And it's just about getting attention, like a grown man pulling a yellow thing out of his pocket. And so obviously then I make it disappear and I say it's not magic. Marketing is not magic. And I really think that's where we need to tell stories. And it's all about stories in the end. And that's why I was so excited to have Felix on. So we connected from Social Saturday. And we connected, we had our little chat. He said, we started, I found out what he was about, what he was, to hear his story, his experience, his journey, coming from Germany, that whole experience, kind of seeing the American dream, chasing what used to be the American dream, coach. So he ties a lot to our vision of that and how that's changed a little bit. And so that's what spurred him to even go from being a surgeon. Also, this dude went to the level of degrees of schooling and everything when it comes to knowledge and said, nope, this is not for me. I don't like what's going on here. I need to start coaching, and I need to show people how to really follow what's most important, and is your heart. And I'm going to leave that teaser because, man, I got to see a little bit more of what he's about and his journey. He actually was on, I got a little teaser of a podcast that we'll be releasing tomorrow that he was on to share a little bit more of his story. And he's all about the heart. I'm going to lead this from his about because it's very short and simple, sweet. And that's kind of what Felix is to the point. But so and he's laser focused, like his thing says. But if you want to become extraordinary, you need an unconventional coach, coaching with surgical precision. If I can't cut it out, I can't fix it. As a surgeon, I was trained that a chance to cut is a chance to cure, which also means that if I can't cut it out, I can't fix it. So let me help you cut out the bullshit in your life. I'm going to leave it there because I think that's where we need to focus on is what are the excuses we're holding on to that's keeping us? What is the bullshit that we're keeping there that is keeping us from getting to that next level that we know we want, that we need to believe in ourselves? And so hopefully I did the intro justice, but Felix, you guys are going to love him. Coach, I can't wait to bring him out. You ready, Coach?
Yeah, man, let's go.
All right. So we'll leave you with this. The superhero's coming. Elevate your edge. We got Felix Boecker coming on next.
You get one heartbeat song. Take it seriously. This is your masterpiece. Don't forget to dream and taste the colors in the air you breathe. It's your masterpiece. Go ahead and feel it all. Don't stop till it is beautiful. Don't stop till it is beautiful. Don't stop till it is beautiful.
Again, everybody, we got Felix Boecker, and I forgot to mention too. He is a fellow Ohioan, so shout out to they'll always be the track to us, but he is from Toledo. So Felix, what's up, dude? Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me. By the way, that's a killer introductory, that little video segment you have there. I love it. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you, man. We lost Coach already. Not good. So we might have to take Coach in the back until he comes back. But Felix, so again, I gave a little teaser. Coach said that was a great teaser. But if you could get into the story of Germany to surgeon to what am I doing to I need to help and how do I help, and get into that story because I'd love you to start there.
Yeah. How much time do we have? Because I mean, obviously, it's there's so many twists and turns to my story, and if anything, I want to say, my story is uniquely my own. It's the stuff I've been through, but I think there are some common themes in my story that other people have been able to resonate with, that have connected with certain aspects of that story. Right? Not everybody becomes a trauma surgeon. But the idea of pursuing a lifelong career in academia and spending a lot of time in school and getting degrees and certificates, and then possibly even walking away from that like I did, are certainly things that I think will resonate with a lot of people. The same thing with, for me, for the longest time, I didn't know who I was, right? Who is Felix? And I think that's also a common theme that can resonate with a lot of people. So yes, I was born and raised in Germany. I was 15 and a half, almost exactly on the dot when we moved to Florida, which was awesome because you needed your learner's permit for about 6 months before your birthday, before your 16th birthday, to get a driver's license. And so my birthday's in December. So pretty much the second I stepped off the plane, I went to the DMV and got my learner's permit so that on my 16th birthday, I could get my full driver's license. So moved to Florida, which was an interesting experience in and of itself because just from an academic standpoint, I was a terrible student in Germany. I mean, straight C's, didn't care for school. All I wanted to do was play soccer after school and video games with my friends. And coming here to the United States now, my parents put me into a college prep school, which, mind you, I wasn't a great student in Germany. Now I'm coming to America where a different language is spoken, the culture is different. And truth be told, I didn't even know what college meant when I came here. So definitely a lot of struggles right from the start. And I really have to give a shout out to Tracy Harrison, who was a fantastic English teacher for me in 10th grade. She really took me under her wing for the first 2 months of that year and changed my life completely. I went from, our summer reading assignment that year was 1984 by George Orwell. And I got the book in Germany still. And the assignment was write a 6-page reflection essay on the book. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't even know what that would have meant in German. I didn't know that it meant double spaced. Let's just say I completely bombed that assignment. Tracy Harrison said, "You don't ever want to see that paper again." And I never did. The first book we read, again, another essay, House on Mango Street. I got a D- on that essay, only because she felt like she shouldn't give me 2 Fs in a row. But I really should have deserved that F on that paper. And
she gave you grace. She gave you grace. So clearly, she was a good mentor. She was giving you grace even at that time.
I know. But here's here's where she really changed my life. For the third book of the year, Henderson the Ranking, I worked with her hours after school, and I really wanted to learn, what does it mean to actually reflect on literature, right? If you're giving us these assignments, what does that really mean? And she showed me, right? What does that mean to dissect a piece of literature and influence it with my own thoughts in a way that's cohesive and coherent in a paper. I got an A- on that paper.
Nice.
And that was the lowest grade I have received on an English assignment since. So that's why, I mean, it really kudos to Tracy Harrison for making that happen. I almost got an English degree in college, actually. I think it was like 3 courses shy of doing that. But I was going on to medical school, so I'm like, I don't need the English degree. Now I wish I probably should have done it. But so it completely changed my life academically. I would say in Germany, the idea of going to medicine wasn't even an idea. At the time, and probably still to this day. You really needed to have straight A's, like literally straight A's coming out of school, plus 6 years of Latin. I didn't have either of those. And so the idea of going to medicine wasn't even on the radar for me. Coming here to the US, obviously my academic career completely changed. And what I was really interested in was flying airplanes. I really wanted to become a pilot. But I don't know if you guys remember 9/11, but that happened during my senior year of high school. And so as I was talking about aviation and going to piloting school and trying to figure out what my next steps are, everyone, literally everyone, friends, family, neighbors, school counselors, everyone said, don't do it. Go into medicine. It's easier. You make more money. And what do you know as an 18-year-old? You don't know anything, right?
Isn't that crazy? But we expect you to make life decisions for your whole life at 18.
Absolutely. Even younger than that. So my girlfriend is a middle school counselor, and they have career days, and it's like a big thing at their school. I'm like, how? Like at that point, like in 7th and 8th grade, again, soccer and video games. Not trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. I mean, I never got a chance to truly explore things in my life as a result of all that. So I went down the career of going to medicine. 14 years later, was a trauma surgeon, and I actually, during my stint in medical school, I realized that it was kind of expensive to become a doctor. And so one day, Sergeant Driscoll was there with some Papa John's pizza, and it was delicious. And so I signed up with the Air Force, and they ended up paying for 3 years of school, and they gave me a stipend and paid for all the supplies, which then later meant I owed the Air Force 3 years on active duty, which is really how I became a trauma surgeon, because after my surgical training, I went to St. Louis for the Air Force and was a trainer at one of their trauma training platforms. And that's really where I became a trauma surgeon. It wasn't really until that time. So 4 years of college, 4 years of med school, 5 years of surgical training, getting to St. Louis. This was the first time I would say I finally was able to breathe a little bit. And that's I think when the first thoughts started creeping in for me. What am I doing? Why am I here? Who is Felix? Right. Among all of that time, my relationship was faltering, which really we never had any time together. We met about medical school and during my surgical training, we never had any time really together. I always used to joke that during my surgical training that I was cheating on my job by having an affair with my wife. So, I finally realized this wasn't working out. We split up, got divorced. She moved back home here in the Southeast Michigan area. And that's how I ultimately ended up in Toledo, because I wanted to be closer to the kids. I did the long distance dad thing for over a year and it just was terrible and I didn't like it. So I moved here to Toledo, not because of a job, but because of my kids. And as part of that transition too, I realized that my job in St. Louis was the best job I ever had and also the worst job I ever had. From a professional standpoint, what I was able to do and what I learned to do, the things that we really were able to do for our patients was absolutely astonishing. I mean, it was incredible. Tip of the spear medicine. We did fantastic stuff. The collaboration was phenomenal. I mean, the best people I've ever worked with. But the job completely destroyed me physically, mentally, and emotionally. And so I did a lot of that soul searching. At least that journey started then. Who is Felix? And when I came to Toledo, I actually transitioned out of trauma into wound care to give me more time for the kids. Again, I came here not for the job. I came here for the kids. And I was like, I needed to make that time for the kids. So now I had no nights, no weekends, no call, which was awesome. More time with the kids. But it also meant more time for me. And as I started my own deeper self-reflection, my deeper introspection on myself, I realized that I went into medicine for the wrong reasons. I went into medicine because everyone told me I should, not because I wanted to. And I love helping people, don't get me wrong. And I think that was the allure with medicine, if anything, is that it gives me a platform to help people. But especially in the last few years working now, what really burnt me out was that I wasn't helping people. All I was doing was, hacking away at a keyboard. I really was an expensive, overly paid data entry clerk for the healthcare system. 80% of my time was spent on a keyboard creating documentation to cover the legalities and cover billing so that someone else could get paid. And I was never able to spend the time with a patient to truly understand them and their problems and help them understand what needed to be done. On top of that, in wound care, this is just an interesting tip, but it's the only space in medicine that I've ever worked in where I can prescribe something for a patient and the patient might get some entirely different treatment because either the insurance company isn't willing to pay for it or the home health agency isn't going to pay for it, or we aren't able to procure the product that the patient needs or should receive. And so patient might come back 2 weeks later, wound hasn't changed, but also the product that I prescribed wasn't applied. And there's no way to get that product, right? That's why the product wasn't applied. So it was an incredibly frustrating experience for me because I really wasn't helping people. All I was doing was helping the system make money off of the patient's problem, but I wasn't really helping anybody. And that really frustrated me. Now, you have to parallel all of that professional side of things with my own struggles with mental health throughout all of that. I have depression. I've had suicidal ideations in the past myself. I've been through therapy multiple times. It really has never really done much for me because the focus was so much on my past. I'm like, my past is my past. It's done. I'm okay with that. I can't change that. I need to know what I can do today to create a better tomorrow for myself. And therapy just wasn't able to do that because they're like, oh, let's talk about your mom again. I'm like, no, my past is my past. Let's talk about today for the future. And coaching wasn't even on the radar for me. I was raised under the assumption that coaches were swindlers and snake oil salesmen, and who needs a coach anyways? But throughout my foray, in medicine, where I really started to get burned out, and I was looking for my way out, like most people in that situation where you have a W-2 and you're looking for a way out, you come across real estate. And in real estate, there's a big community called Bigger Pockets, which also has a podcast. That podcast host at the time that I got involved was Brandon Turner. And Brandon Turner, for anybody who doesn't know, is a self-made multimillionaire. And he's truly built an empire for himself. He gets to live in Hawaii now.
Yeah.
And what struck me as interesting, as I was listening to one of the podcasts, was Brandon was talking about the impact his own coach had on him. And I was like, wait a second. Why would a self-made multimillionaire hire a coach? They don't do anything for you. They're just liars and swindlers, right? You don't need that. You've already done everything yourself. You don't need a coach.
Yeah.
So then I started opening my eyes and be like, well, okay, fine. If he really is that big into coaching, and from my mind he doesn't need it, what really is the allure? What is the power of coaching, right? And so now I started looking into coaching for myself, not based on what other people told me, but what I discovered for myself. And I realized that coaching was the missing piece that I never had, because unlike therapy, coaching is focused on what we can do today to create a better tomorrow for ourselves. So I was like, hey, aha, that's what I want. That's what I need.
I love that you went there with that. I
Right?
absolutely love that you went there with that, because I think there's so many people that are stuck in that same mindset. I think, to me, again, I believe that everything is possible. I'm missing one of three things: either the right mindset, the right skill, or the right person who has that skill that you lack. And it's just you being honest that you suck at it, and you need to find somebody else who's good at it. Like, that's just what it is. But I love that you went there with coaching, because I think so many people get stuck. Coach, I know he unpacks so much. Well, you've got questions. I know you do.
Kind of a series of them going through the story. So tell me a little bit about the Saturday meeting. So what was it? What organization was it through? Because this is a pretty powerful, pairing between you two, and it's just interesting where you meet people. So tell me about that at the beginning.
So honestly, that was just LinkedIn. That was, I think I think I know who it was. It might have been Mark. So Mark, the laundromats, remember he was just on with us?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he had done a social Saturday post, and I just wanted to support him and say, hey, what's up? And I think Felix did the same thing, and we connected, and I was like, yeah, let's hop on a call and see what's going on. And yeah, again, there was just so many ties, and I didn't even know, really, Felix, I didn't know how deep you were, and deep. So I do want to go, since we're already kind of leading to that, but to the depth of coaching. I mean, so I had that same aha, Felix, and I'll say this, and I don't know that I ever shared this, but it was Gary V. So I'm a Gary V. I feel like in some ways like a cousin that I somehow just don't know that he's a cousin, but literally, we lost Coach again. But literally, I heard Gary V. I heard a podcast of one of Gary V's 3 or 4 coaches that Gary V has, and I was like, hold on, Gary V has 3 or 4 coaches? Yeah. Like, holy shit, that's not, and I've always been big into coaching, because I was always that. I wasn't ever a gifted athlete to blow people away with like my talent or skill, but I was, I guess, blessed to understand the game enough. So I was always like that player's coach. Just always understood the edge or the strategy to it, so that I can kind of like coach from the sidelines. But I always valued coaching, because I always loved a good coach. So I guess if we could go into coaching a little bit more, and then I want to go deeper, because I know in the podcast that I recently seen that you'll have releasing tomorrow. Yeah. But I got a little sneak peek of that. You talked a lot about finding out who you are and finding why you're doing it and the heart. And I think that's where our missions, and Coach was nailing it with how we kind of align. But I think even on that end, we align very deep. So our mission of the Robin Hood Capitalist is helping 10,000 families find their heaven on earth. And to us, their heaven on earth is where you're talking about, is that depthness of just doing what you love with who you love. And clearly on your journey, you were like, hold on, why am I doing this? So you didn't even know why you were doing it. And I think a lot of us get stuck in that because, again, schooling or whatever it is guides us down that direction of, well, we have to make this decision now. You're 20 years old and figure out what you're doing for the rest of your life. What? Like, I don't even know who I am. And so, like, I think there is a lot of that journey that a lot of us get stuck in. So what was it, when was it first off in your surgical journey that you're like, okay, who am I and why am I doing this? Was there a certain event, or was it just as you said, being burnt out?
Yeah, no, I think it really started from the first day of medical school. I told you earlier how my academic career here in the US started, right? And like I said, my academic career really excelled after that, after working, especially on that English. That was always my hard part. But I did exceptionally well the rest of high school. I did really well in college. And when I got to medical school was the first time that I struggled academically. I just couldn't relate to the content, and I didn't know why, right? You just push through, did the best you can. And when I went into medical school in the first place, I was actually thinking of becoming an emergency room physician because I had shadowed some people in the ER, and that's really the only piece of the medical system that I really had any exposure to. And I kind of like the fast pace and being able to fix problems quickly. But when I went to medical school and I was actually on the physician side of things all of a sudden, and I realized that a lot of the problems that people see in the ER really should be dealt with by a good primary care physician, by a family doctor. And I was like, that's not why I went to the ER. Like, that's not exciting to me, right? I want to deal with the big problems, not like the fact that you ran out of insulin. So I had a bit of at that point, I already had a bit of a struggle now. Like, what am I going to do? Like, the only thing I knew I didn't want to do was surgery. So my surgical rotation came up, and we had 4 choices for our electives. We had to do 4 weeks of trauma, and we had to do 4 weeks of an elective. And because I knew I didn't want to become a surgeon, I chose the easy elective. I chose the pediatric surgery elective, the one where the hours weren't terrible, the attendings were nice, and it's the one that everybody who didn't want to go into surgery chose. Well, my very first day on that rotation, not knowing really anything in the hospital, I've never been in an operating room before. I kind of stumbled my way into the OR because the residents told me that's where I needed to be. And I walk in, and there's an attending physician trying to place a central line on I think 7-year-old kid. And at that point, I didn't even know what a central line was. It's just a big IV that goes into one of the big veins in your neck. He goes, "All right, scrub in. I'll let you do this." I was like, wait, hold on a second. What are we even doing here, right? And so he walked me through placing that central line on a 7-year-old kid, and he was totally nice about it. I mean, he couldn't get the stick, and so when I couldn't get it, it was perfectly fine because he couldn't get it either at first. We managed to get it in, but that changed my life at that point because I realized all of a sudden that I can have a profound impact on people in a very short period of time, and that's what allured me into surgery then at that point. But throughout my surgical training, I also realized that I didn't have quite the personality to fit in. I fit in with surgeons, but there's still something that just seemed a little off. And I can now I know what that was. And that is that I really didn't like the idea that I would do something to someone else, physically do something, right? Inflict scars, cut them open, cut things out. And they had no say in it, right? I am not here to tell you how to live your life. Who's to say that I'm the one who gets to decide where the scars are on your body? We didn't really get to have that discussion with anybody, right? Because they're asleep. And so that I now realize that's really where I failed to fit in with the surgical world. But the big thing for me ultimately is that if I had been able to actually help people in medicine, I might have been able to stick with it longer. But I really wasn't helping anybody. And I wanted to have a bigger impact on people, on the world. And I just wasn't able to do that in medicine. It didn't allow me the platform to do that. And like I said, when I discovered coaching for myself, I was still working as a physician at the time. It changed my life tremendously, right? What I realized was in 4 years of doing self-development work, reading all the books and journaling and doing all the exercises, I couldn't accomplish in 4 years what I was able to accomplish in 4 months with my coach. And I was like, that's impressive. That's fantastic. I want to be able to have that impact on other people. And I don't want other people to make the same mistakes I made. Maybe I should become a coach. And so I did.
I love that. And we got to throw up Tanya's comment here because I think it ties right into that. And Coach, if you got a question, but life stories are so varied and interesting. And that's really what coaching, I think, and that's where, again, it's the mastermind. It's the whole, right, Coach? I mean, it's the whole mastermind idea of Napoleon Hill. It's when you can get multiple ideas or brains talking. That third mind that just appears is pretty darn powerful.
Yeah, so I get the comment a lot that, I think about these things and I think about these things, but the answers don't come until we're talking together. And that's kind of what coaching is sometimes it's hard to quantify exactly how it works. It just works. And so it's sometimes when people say, what do you do? Well, I change the world through business coaching and leadership training. And that's what I try to do. But this conversation is incredibly interesting to me. My son-in-law, the husband of my daughter that I'm here with, he's in his second year of residency, and some of the stories he talks about of being in surgeries from an early time kind of parallel with what you said. And I'm blown away by some of the things that he's already been able to do in just a few short years. But there's so many directions. I've got so many questions for you. I'm going to start at the end, though. With the surgical career, what was it that forced it to turn into something that was less helpful in all paperwork? Is it really the bureaucracy that's involved, or what pulled you away?
Great question.
Yeah, a lot of it is the bureaucracy and the regulations, because that's all my life was. It wasn't about helping people. Like I said, it was about, here's the thing. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what's in the computer, right? If what happens in that room doesn't matter. I could do something or not do something. The truth is whatever is in the computer. And so everybody focuses so hard on making sure the documentation is right, for make sure we don't get sued by the patient, or make sure that the documentation is up to par so we can get every last cent out of that insurance company. And what we really fail to address is what the patient actually needs. A great example of this is my girlfriend. Actually, she for the longest time, she's a counselor, like I said. We've talked about this for a while. She's like, I don't understand why you would ever walk away from medicine. You have, such a cush job. You don't work that long. You make great money. Why would you ever walk away from that? And
I'm sure you get that asked that a lot.
Yeah, that was in my head too.
Right. Well, so in January, she developed what's called, actually in December, she developed an acute abdomen, which is a surgical emergency, right? And so me now, as a trained general surgeon, trauma surgeon, I look at her and I'm like, holy shitball, she needs to be in the operating room right now. This is serious. And I don't know what's going on, right? And this is my own girlfriend. I'm just like, oh, this is terrifying to me. She goes to the emergency room. They do a CT scan, and the CT scan comes back as normal. Now, the ER was going to discharge her. And I said, hold on, she has an acute abdomen, right? She needs morphine just to be able to roll over in this bed. There's nothing normal about this. But well, the CT says it's normal, so there's nothing for us to do. So what I ended up doing is I called the general surgeon on call. I just happened to be in that system, and I had his number, right? I was lucky enough to be able to make that phone call. I can't imagine how many other people are in her position with a problem that's as serious as hers that gets completely ignored. Yeah. So I called the surgeon. I described the situation to him. He looks at the CT scan with me, and we found on one slice a tiny little dot of free air. Now, there's obviously not supposed to be air freely floating around in your abdomen. So we're like, all right, that would explain why she potentially has a problem. So she goes to the operating room. They do an exploration. Can't find anything. She wakes up from anesthesia. Her pain doesn't go away. If anything, it's worse. The whole night, the entire night, I was in the hospital with her all night. Every 2 hours, she required Dilaudid, and she could have probably used it every hour just to be able to breathe. Her monitor kept alarming because she stopped breathing so much because she didn't want to breathe because her abdomen hurt so much. Right. Jeez. So again, I'm a surgeon. I know what's going on. I'm sitting there seeing all this, listening to this. The nurses, no idea. She's not on a surgical floor. She's on a cardiac floor, right? These nurses they know everything about the heart. They know nothing about the belly. And so they're like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. The surgeons never saw her again. The resident walked in the next morning. The resident who had been in the OR the night before, which is fine. I'm totally cool with that. The resident walks in, and without even asking how the night was, tells her what the plan was for the day. I was like, hang on a second. You haven't even asked her how her night was. How do you know what you're going to do? And she said, oh, I'm sorry. I'll get to that. Now, the resident didn't know that I was a surgeon. I think she found that out later because she refused to come back while I was there. Needless to say, she ultimately got discharged from the hospital with, at least officially, not a diagnosis. Nobody could figure this out. But the surgeons never went to see her again. And she was suffering from an acute abdomen for almost 2 days straight, requiring Dilaudid every 2 hours just to be able to breathe. And everybody said, oh, you're totally fine. You're normal. I'm like, how do you compute those two? Right. And so that's my frustration with the medical system, because everybody pays so much attention to what's going on in the computer and not what's happening at the bedside. I was at the bedside. I was paying attention. And with the symptoms and everything she was describing, I was like, look, I think you have appendicitis. And I think you got to the hospital too soon for them to recognize anything either on the CT or in the operating room. So I got the surgeon convinced to send her home on antibiotics. And lo and behold, within a few days of antibiotics, her pain improved. So I still think she had appendicitis. But the only reason I know that is because I was there at the bedside. I listened to her. I looked at her. I examined her. No one else did, because everyone was stuck in front of a computer miles away looking at the scenario from a distance. And when she came out of the hospital, her first response to me was, I now understand. I now understand why you are so frustrated by the medical system and why you don't fit in, because you actually care. You actually listened. As a matter of fact, you're the only person who listened the entire time I was there. And that's a sad state of affairs, because again, she was lucky enough to have me. I had the knowledge to help her through that. How many other people are out there suffering at the hands of the system who don't have the advocates who know how to navigate the system and push for the right treatment? Boggles my mind. And I could not stand for that anymore. I could not wave that banner and be proud of the system that completely ignores patients because it's profits over patients. So I don't know. I'm sorry. I got a little emotional there because it's so near.
No,
dear to
no,
my heart.
no,
Did I answer your question there, Stacey?
Yeah. So and so we've had we had Dr. Steve on,
Dr.
one of our early guests. He was in clinic care, and his kind of description of what was going on was very similar. He was reprimanded for spending too much time getting to know the patients to find out what the real problem was, and not just prescribing a pill and sending them on their way to hit his X number of patients in 6 hours, kind of a formula that he had to meet. So we've heard similar stories like this. And so I guess we don't want to get into how do we fix the medical industry at this point. So even though that's an amazing, it's something I think about all the time, I'm going to take it this way instead, though. How did that experience influence the way you deal with people from a coaching standpoint?
Well, I mean, at that point, I was already a coach. I just wasn't full-time in coaching it because I was still working at the tail end of my medical career. And I would say that's one of the reasons I was so frustrated by the medical world, because I wasn't able to spend the time with people, right? In my coaching side of things, if we have an hour reserved to chat about your problems, we have an hour to chat about your problems. But in the medical world, just like you mentioned, the way reimbursements work for physicians, you have to see 4 patients an hour in order to cover the expense of your office, your clinic staff, the supplies, and all the salaries. So if you don't see a minimum of 4 patients an hour, you don't have a sustainable practice, which again, in those 15 minutes, you also have to generate all the documentation unless you spend an additional, several hours afterwards. I mean, there's been some studies that actually said that physicians need, physicians who work 60 hours a week seeing patients need additional 70 hours a week to create the documentation. I mean, it's absolute insanity, right? Physicians, if you truly wanted to take the time with patients to truly get to know them and understand them and help them with their problems, you would never sleep. You would never eat. Because the way the reimbursements are set and how low they are just makes it unsustainable just to even maintain a life.
So
wow.
The other thing that really interests me about your story is I love the way the human brain works and how one thing can influence another. And so you started this whole story with the fact that dissecting literature kind of turned your entire educational and professional career around. What do you think it is about that as a starting point that made it so important? Because sometimes we ignore the importance of some of the more liberal arts type of education like that, and a lot of folks are saying we need to go away completely from it. I'm kind of a believer in classical education, but what was it about dissecting literature that was so impactful?
Well, there was a few things going on. First of all, I had noticed in Germany a trajectory of a downhill grade with my grades, and I knew at that point I started to realize that I needed to change something, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be. So in the German educational system, I actually had the opportunity in ninth grade, my last year there, to either go down the science track and be heavy on chemistry, biology, physics, or go down the language track and add Latin to the mix. Now, in fifth grade, I started English as a second language, which meant in seventh grade, I had to start French as a second language. Some people did it reverse, but I didn't care for French, so I started with English. My French was absolutely horrible. I went sort of from an A-B student my first year to a B-C student to essentially a C-D student in my third year. And I realized even my foundations in German were absolutely terrible. And I was like, I needed to change something. And so I went down the language path because I realized I needed to change something. And I figured if I study Latin from scratch, that would help me rebuild the foundation I didn't have in German or in French and maybe make up the difference. Not only have 1 year of that in Germany, but it was the first time that I started to take ownership over my own path because I didn't understand it, but I started to see some patterns develop. And so when I came to the US, some of that thinking was still happening. But the other benefit I sort of had is I didn't have any friends here. I had nothing else to do. So I realized I might as well study. And the math side of things was really easy for me because the math that we did in 10th grade, I already did in 8th grade. Like I was already like 2 years ahead of the curve. So I didn't have to really study for math at all, which allowed me actually to get an edge on everyone else because as long as I kept going, I was staying ahead of the curve, right? Really, the one thing I needed to work on was my English. The one area in high school that I never understood really well at the time was history. That's just something that never connected with me. That's the one subject I really did poorly in was history. It was, the general world history class was interesting, but not like fascinating. U.S. history bored me to death. I really couldn't connect with the content. And it was also the way it was demonstrated to us really in the classroom was based on the foundations of all the years of U.S. history that everyone else had before me, right? I didn't have any of that. I walked into U.S. history class in 10th grade without having 9 years of U.S. history before that. And so I really struggled with history. But on the science side of things, those things actually started to become easy for me. And I realized I didn't really need to study for those things. And so it was really just the English that I had to really work on. And once I got that figured out, everything else kind of fell into place. But yeah, for the most part, it's because I didn't have any friends. I had nothing else to do. So I might as well spend my time getting to be better. Did I truly understand why I was doing it? No, absolutely not. But I just knew something had to change. And there was something more out for me. I just didn't know what that was.
The building blocks of education are so fascinating. But I'm sure that base of Latin ended up being beneficial in medical school too, because so much of that is based on Latin. But DJ, I know you said you're going to play a video. Before we get to that, let me ask you this question: have you ever learned to fly the plane?
I don't have any videos. I don't have any videos either.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that podcast is going to be released tomorrow. Robert Mantelson's Search for Health and Wellness.
Yes.
Released tomorrow. It's actually a fascinating story. But anyways, so I started my last year in medical school. One of our deans actually had all the flying certificates except the ATP, which is the airline transport pilot. So yeah, he couldn't fly for an airline. But outside of that, he had every flying certification, teaching certification ever known to man. He's been to, I think, like 80% of the airports in the country, like big and small. And so he was one of the deans at our medical school, Larry Gardner, a fascinating individual. And so there was me and there was two other guys who had mentioned our interest in aviation to him. And so he said, well, it's your last year. Why don't we just do some ground school? And I'll teach you. And so,
awesome.
Right. So we bought the books, we did the ground school with him. I actually took the test and passed, but then I started my surgical training and I didn't have the time to do the practicals. And so that the test has now since expired and it is on my radar to get back into again. It's something I definitely still have on my radar to do. But just life has taken me other ways. I had kids and all of a sudden, like everything, your whole life.
Everything changes after that.
It changes everything, right?
It sure does.
Life was a whole lot easier before I had kids. But yeah, no, I started the process actually, and it was fascinating. It was awesome. I had so much fun reading the books and learning how to navigate and trying to figure out, how do you triangulate a plane against a countercurrent of wind and how fast do you have to fly and all that stuff. It was absolutely cool. It was fascinating. I did the test. I failed. I missed one question on the test, and but then I never did the practical, so it kind of went to waste. But it was a good experience, and I will pick it up again someday.
That's
So
awesome.
you wanting to fly, does that have to do with the superhero on the for the podcast?
Oh no! I actually that's actually my old podcast image. I was playing
Oh,
around with
okay.
a bunch of like comic book
I
images,
love it.
and so that's where that one came from. I was just looking for sort of this comic book style picture for the podcast, and that's where that came from. I just had this short segment in my life where I don't know, I wanted to play with comic books.
I
I
think we
love
all
it.
have those.
Of course, some of us
So,
still do.
so let me ask you this: I mean, this was a pretty big, huge emotional inflection point. You're a surgeon. You're at this critical time in your thought processes. I mean, it's a pretty serious time of life. How did you? And I know how you got inspired to look for a coach, but where did you find one?
So I
Yeah.
found one actually in Lumia, where I did my coach certification through. That's ultimately where I connected with the coach that really transformed my life. So, and unfortunately, she has since quit. And unfortunately, even worse than that, she was just diagnosed with glioblastoma, and she's having surgery today on her brain. So,
Oh
I'm
man.
really, really sad that I no longer have that connection with her, because she absolutely changed my life. And what's interesting, I've said this before on a few other podcasts, but the question that she asked me is so simple. It sounds so trite. It sounds so banal, but it really required several months of work with her to truly find the answer for myself. And the question, quite simply, is, Felix, where is your heart? That was it. Couldn't answer. Didn't know. I mean, I said from a medical background, right? I was like, it's right here, right here. That's where my heart is. But she wasn't talking about my physical heart, obviously. And even at the time, it's so interesting. Like, these images are still so vivid inside my head. And when she asked me that question, I saw in my head the heart locked inside a chest with chains wrapped around it, in a dungeon with a gate in front of it, the key thrown away, dust and cobwebs everywhere. I mean, that's literally the image that came to my head when she asked me the question, "Where's your heart?" And as we chipped away at the pieces and got closer and closer to the answer, that image, literally, the gate opened. I found the chest. I got the chains off. I was able to lift the cover on it, and I was finally able to see who I truly was. And it's just fascinating how that imagery actually played inside my head. But that's really what made the huge transformational shift for me, was that simple question: "Where's your heart?"
Mm.
Those simple questions are the most difficult.
Right. I was gonna say that, Coach. I think coaching, you ask the simple ones, and they're like, boom. It's like almost like they hit a deer in headlights. Like what? Like what do I even say to that? And I think that's instantly where you go to. But I'm glad you shared that, Felix. I am stealing from the episode airing tomorrow, guys. But reach this out. But you went into a little bit of this with that question she asked. If you could go into the four brains, because I think that uh, is power. And if we could we'll spend the last, Coach, you'll love this, but we'll spend the last like 12, 20 minutes, 12, 15 minutes on that. Because I think the four brains, if you could go into what are the four brains and how you kind of came up with that. And then I want to touch on this, because I think there's a lot of things we could go into on this.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know exactly when I had that brain spark, but it kind of all fell into place, and it is an extension of that question: "Where is your heart?" That's really where I think a lot of this originated from. So I am coming at this obviously as a trauma surgeon. There's not a single body cavity I haven't had my finger in the last few years. I obviously been formally trained on anatomy, but the point is, we have four brains, and so we're not an octopus. We're human, but we have four brains. And so, what are the four brains? And the mnemonic to go by is CICO. That tells you what the four brains are, and also the order in which you should consult them with whenever you have to make a decision. And that's a decision you make in your personal life, your professional life, your business, interpersonal relationship. It doesn't matter. If you have to make a decision in your life, you consult with the four brains in this order. The first brain, the C, is your core, your corazon, your heart. Always make a decision out of love first, right? Right here. Are you making that decision out of love? Love for yourself and love for everyone else involved. That's your first brain, your heart. Most important one, the one you should always consult first. And that's the one I didn't understand for myself, right? If you look at my life trajectory, it's because I made decisions that didn't come from the heart, because I didn't know where my heart was. It wasn't until I found my heart that I was able to make the right decisions. So obviously you got to figure out where your heart is at. But once you know where your heart is at, consult with your heart first. Make decisions out of love. CI, so the I stands for your intestines. Now, this is fascinating. I'm talking about the gut feeling, right? That gut feeling, that intuition that you get. Again, looking anatomically, physiologically, your intestines, our intestines as human beings have several 100 million neurons. The simplest of brains that we know of, I don't even know what the creature's called, but it has like 200 neurons, right? So the very simplest of brains that we know of, the little structure that we actually identify as a brain only has 200 neurons, and yet our gut has hundreds of millions. So we have an order of magnitude more neurons in our brain, in our gut, which means it's a brain in and of itself. That gut feeling is real. That gut feeling is telling us something. And it also makes sense, again, coming back to my depression, for example, why diet has such a profound impact on our mood, because we're feeding those neurons directly. You feed your neurons crap, you're going to feel like crap. You're going to feed your neurons some good food, you're going to feel good. Simple as that.
Jim Quick shares the gut brain too. Jim Quick's big on the gut brain.
Yeah, he is. You're right. So there's so much we haven't completely understood about the gut and the neurons that are involved with that. But your gut feeling, that instinct, there's something to it, and you got to listen to it. There's something to it. And I can tell you from my own career, obviously I've taken hundreds of tests in my career to become a surgeon. And I have definitely noticed over the years that when I didn't know the answer and I went with my gut feeling, I was right more often than when I tried to reason my way through the answer choices. And so I didn't fully understand that at the time. I just knew if I trusted my gut, I would have a higher probability of getting the answer right. So there's something to the gut feeling. Again, we haven't completely unraveled it, but it's true. So C now is your cerebrum, your cranium. That's the stuff up here. That's the thing we talk about. That's your actual brain. Although even there, this brain is incredibly awesome and incredibly flawed at the same time, right? It can come up with, the human brain is infinitely creative. It's fascinating, but it's also incredibly dumb sometimes. I mean, let's be honest. And some of the feelings and emotions that we feel as a result. I mean, I can tell you, when I get into my depressive moods, I know that's not me. And I know I'm feeling a certain way, and I can't think myself out of that moment. And I just feel so helpless. I'm like, I know this is not me. I don't want to feel this way. And it's all up here. It's crazy. So, and when we're talking, in coaching, we often talk about aligning, right? And the more I dive into the different elements of the brain, this is actually fascinating. I'm reading a book right now on the left and right brain hemispheres. Ian McGilchrist, he wrote the Bible on that. The more I'm realizing, when we talk about aligning, what we're actually talking about is aligning the left and the right hemispheres, actually getting them into sync. It's fascinating. He doesn't actually say that. Those are the conclusions I'm drawing from reading the book. So that's your third brain, is your actual brain up here. But the reason you consult a third is because not only is it perfect, it's also incredibly flawed at the same time. And if you make decisions purely based on logic, you miss out on making decisions out of love and listening to your gut, which are much more profound at making the right decision than the stuff up here sometimes, right? So CIC, and then O, those are your gonads. That's the stuff between your legs. Those are your sex organs for anybody who hasn't gone to medical school, right? So there are times, if you think about it from a purely biological standpoint, we are here to get our genetics into the next generation. That's from a purely biological standpoint. That's why we exist. And so on that Friday night, when you're lonely at the bar and you meet an attractive person, you're thinking with your gonads. And that's perfectly normal. It is a brain. It makes decisions. However, it shouldn't be the first brain you consult, even on those lonely Friday nights. And so those are the four brains, right? Your heart, your intestines, your brain, and your gonads.
I love it.
I just had the mental image of the Seinfeld episode where his gonads are fighting with this cerebral brain.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who can make a whole lot, probably a whole lot better decisions on those lonely Friday nights if you consulted your heart, your intestines, and your brain first, right? But
I'm sure you at least cut out some of the bullshit that you do. If you think of with those first, I'm gonna go to those. Sorry, and then we'll wrap this up. This was awesome, man. Thank you so much. So you got Tanya said, I can barely.
Patients need
Patients
advocates.
need
Yes.
advocates. Yes, Felix was being a nurse to his girlfriend instead of being a surgeon. Yes, I agree. Nurses. So my wife is a nurse. Shout out Mags. I know she was listening and said she loved this. She feels the same way. Felix. She went to nursing school just to say, just to be at the hospital and look at me and say, "Oh my God, I can't do this." For the same reason you said. They and again, I don't blame anybody, and I guess maybe we'll end there. But I do want to throw this throw Mark's comment up there first. My wife's big thing is medicine shouldn't be for profit. I agree. If we could fix that, Mark, if we can fix that. But so she said she couldn't cut off that feeling, and again, it's you're consulting with the not the logic, which I think most people are going to if they're doing certain jobs that are just forcing you to do the wrong things. Again, I look at lawyers and I know what lawyers do, and in the end, they look at the other person and they're just, how much can I get from that person? Oh, that person doesn't have any money. Forget that. But how much can I get from? And that's all that it is in the end. Like, come on, y'all, choose a better career. But anyways, that's just my stab at lawyers real quick. But there are careers that you have to be able to turn off that human feeling, that again, that going to, like you said, the heart first and then going to your gut first. You're just going right here to the logic. That's the only way you do some of those careers in the end. That's the only way you work in this system that we've created to this point in the end, is you're turning off what you're saying you couldn't turn off. And I don't think people should turn that off. Like, we shouldn't turn that off. That's
DJ,
why we have.
You've seen it in your sales career. It's the same thing with a salesperson. They can either be the relationship based, it's out for the good of the other person, or not.
100%. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's other, and again, it's where you then get to that where you had, and I think you're speaking to a lot of people. I think that's what we have with COVID that happened with the great resignation, or all the other names they wanted to call it. But I think it was a lot of people hit that moment that you hit, like, whoa, why am I doing this? And
yeah, there was suddenly time to spend in reflection. After not having time, there was suddenly time to think about these deeper things.
Yeah. So, man, so I appreciate you sharing your story, being so open and honest with this. Again, I think, and back to Tanya. Tanya had a comment. I'll throw that up there real quick. But I think this is what we need more of. Like, this is what it comes down to, guys. Like, share your stories. Be willing to share your stories. Like, be willing to find those coaches, those mentors, those teachers. When I look back on life from whether it was sports, whether it was school, or whatever it was, there's so many. Again, Coach, you nailed it with my career. I mean, I've worked with over 50 different companies because I right away have gotten, like you got, Felix, and a lot of people we've gotten to, like, looking at leadership, and I know they're turning off that heart brain and that gut brain, and they're going right here, and that's the only reason they're still doing and deciding all of the things that they're doing. And I just couldn't, I couldn't, on to the next. Like, where's somebody who actually cares and believes what they're saying and trying to drive what they're doing? So, Felix, if you could share in the last few minutes, where can they find you? Where's your do you have a new podcast? I know you mentioned that was old art. Do you have new art? Where can they find you if they do want to? Do you have a specific focus with coaching that you're looking for?
And that's what I wanted to know. When you got into this, who were you looking for to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me answer all of those questions. The easiest place to find me is brokesurgeon.com. That's my link tree that links to everything. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, that's probably going to be the best place to connect with me. The podcast, I have rebranded it to In Search of 42. 42 being the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And I'm in search of that. So Douglas Adams comes back with that. And so it's the same content. I just rebranded it to, I think, make it more cohesive and bring the conversations that I'm having, as well as the solo episodes that I'm doing together and are just something that makes more sense. So In Search of 42. But yeah, brokesurgeon.com is my link tree. Easiest way to link out to all of that. In terms of who I help professionals and entrepreneurs. So I work obviously with professionals who are just like me, burned out, unclear on the path, trying to figure out who am I? Where do I need to go? I've also, in the last few months, I've gotten involved with Alloy Growth Labs and their morning mentoring program, which is, they call it the Dolphin Tank because it's not quite as vicious as Shark Tank, but it's very similar, working with startups and founders. And so I've worked with them with a bunch of startups and entrepreneurs as well. It's been a fascinating journey, being in the room with other dolphins, if you will. we're not quite
you're
as
not
vicious as
attacking
sharks,
you're not vicious. I like that. I like that.
It's been an absolutely incredible experience to be able to do that, and to work with them through Ohio Accelerate, which is the accelerated program just for Ohio. It's been a wonderful journey. So I do the entrepreneurial coaching as well, just like you guys, on leadership as well as work-life balance. I mean, you see this a lot with startups. You get so focused on the job, you lose focus of your life, right? And again, it's the big thing for me is figuring out who you are and where it is that you're actually trying to go without losing track of who you are in the process. So yeah, professionals and entrepreneurs is the short answer to that.
Yeah, we could do another whole episode just on the blurred lines between the job and what real life is supposed to be.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will definitely have to have you come back on for that, dude. This is awesome, and me and Coach can talk about this stuff all day. I'll throw up these. Thank you guys for all the audience and everybody with the comments today. This was awesome. So Tanya said, "Isn't it amazing to see grown men being so open and vulnerable? Congratulations. That's what we need more of, Tanya. If more people would just be very open, share their stories, you have no idea how it could." Just one little thing that somebody says could just change somebody's life forever. I mean, you shared with your teacher and then your coach. I mean, I'm sure when you tie back to there's just one little thing. If you really we went back and forth for a little bit talking about it, you figure out, man, it was this one thing got me just focused in this, and that was it. Like that. Like there's no turning back. It's like once you could get somebody to just get you guided in that right degree, like you might be missing it just a little bit, man, they get you locked in. Forget it. Game over. Like you're locked in. And so search those coaches. Search them, please. Please.
The other thing that I want to say, and this goes a little bit to what Coach Stacey was saying earlier too, is working with a coach. Sometimes the questions are incredibly simple, and certainly none of my coaches have ever asked me questions I didn't ask myself before. But working with that person, even if they are the ones now asking the question, it's just different. It sits different. There's something more visceral to that, where if I just think about it on my own in the shower, I have the same questions. I don't come up with the same answers, right? And so there is something incredibly powerful in working with another human being, another coach, if you will, to bring those answers truly to light that you aren't able to do on your own. I mean, like I said, in 4 years of self-development, I couldn't do what I did in 4 months working with a coach, right? And I read all the books, I did all the journals, I did all the exercises. So working with a coach truly is an incredibly transformative and powerful experience.
Yeah, and I don't know if it holds true for you, but for me, it's therapeutic on this side too, because the process of asking the questions and seeing their lived experience, it's like, man, I have a hard time not saying, "Oh gosh, I totally agree with you," instead of asking the next appropriate question.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's a give and a take, right? It's not just about helping others. We also get something out of that. And I had a couple of conversations on that very topic with some other coaches as well. And it's always a give and a take, which is, I think, and one of the reasons that I don't work just with anybody, right? You have to obviously be able to connect with me, but I also have to be able to connect with you. There has to be a good relationship between us. And so, on paper, a good coach can coach anybody, but in reality, that just doesn't happen because you got to have a good, trusting, vibing connection both ways.
It's like you could sell anything to anybody, but you shouldn't. Like you just shouldn't. Like there's people that are made for you. There's the right customer and there's the wrong customer, and there's the right one for everybody. So yeah, no, I agree.
There's a level of commitment that has to be there on both sides, or it's just not going to work.
Absolutely, and it has to be matched on both sides, or that's where you lose it completely. You'll lose it right away from there. But so day one, I seen the gap. It's a huge one. Yeah, kudos to you for pushing forward. This is my wife, so kudos to you for pushing forward for your good in the world, to do your good in the world. So she's giving you props. I agree. Kudos to you, man, for chasing and listening to your heart. That's in the end, that's what I want more people to do. If we can forget the confusion of religion, God, scary things that make you think, oh no, I can't think of those things, and just listen to your dang heart.
Yeah.
You would be surprised of what it tells you. And
Right.
I love that you and that's one thing. And clearly you're deep enough. And I can't wait to have you back on, Coach. You know that we do have to have him back on to get a little bit deeper into some of this. And I can't wait to break this down on
I mean,
Thursday.
we talk, hey, DJ, we talk about being bold, of people taking the steps into entrepreneurship and all those things. Think of the boldness it took to go from a career as a surgeon
Right,
and walk
all
away
the
from it,
invested time,
all the
and
time and
I
money.
sat with so many people in different training groups, and I've shared that with Maggie. I'm like, guys, you have no idea. Like, what Gary Vee says to people is right. Like, there is the ROI on college degree is not the same that it used to be, and like, there's certain professions that you need, but there's a lot that go wasted. And I've worked with many of those people that spent 5 years that I spent 5 years getting experience, knowledge, and all of that, while they spent stuck in books just to use that degree to come sell with me. And it's like, come on, like what this doesn't make sense. Like, what is going on here? So it's like, I knew it didn't add up. And yeah, to walk away from, like you said, that invested time, the money, the expense, that's balls. Like that,
Prestige,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
the prestige that goes along with it. Yeah, the guy had to be a big ego boost to say, I am a surgeon and that sort of thing.
yeah.
Actually, I never felt comfortable with that. From the day I graduated medical school, I've never been comfortable being called doctor, and I'll tell you why. Um, we're all, not just me, but we're all such faceted and multidimensional beings that if somebody, and I see this even to this day, if people recognize that I'm a doctor, all of a sudden that's all I am to them, right? It fails to uncover the lover, the father, the vet, the jeeper, the woodworker, the podcast host, the coach, right? The terrible cook. It fails to see all these other dimensions to me
Yeah.
by reducing me to doctor. And
Mm.
so there is definitely some element of prestige that comes with it. Don't get me wrong on that, but I think it's inappropriate because it fails to see me as the human being that I truly am. I'm not any more special than the next person. I just went to a lot of school. That's all I did, right?
And I love that you said that. I think that's where most people are lacking in the end is the belief in themselves. If
Yeah,
they
that's a
believe that they're human, just like the other person, and that's what again, there's no difference than the three of us, and Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or name anybody, and we can all do the same thing. Do we want to? Do you know what they're doing to sacrifice to get there? Are you willing to do that? That's all that it takes. Like, there's certain things that it takes. Again, it's either a mindset, it's a skill, or it's a connection. One of those three things, I promise you, you can get to the next level of any level that you want to. Anybody. And I love that you shared that, because I think that's what we need to get rid of. Forget the titles, forget the labels, forget, yes, that's one of the many labels. Well, you want to know what I'm proud of? The proud things of, I'm a grandpa, I'm a dad, those
Exactly.
labels. Let's talk about those,
Yeah.
and nobody talks about those. So we'll have to get on a deeper conversation. I love that. I'll leave you with where I wanted to start every podcast with. So I seen a Heath Ledger quote, and shout out to Heath Ledger. I believe he was deeper on a deep level, and that's where he was able to get into the Joker and some of these parts so well. But he said, when we meet people, we always ask, like it's a shopping list, what kind of car you drive, where you live, what you do for work, but we never ask, are you happy? Are you happy? And that's why I wanted to start every show. But that was kind of one of those questions that I think when you ask people, they're kind of like, huh? I don't know. Am I happy? I don't even know how to ask that. So I stopped asking it, but I'll leave you with that. Are you happy? Are you happy with your life currently? And are you happy with the direction it's going?
Well, I have two things to say about that. The first one is that's exactly the post I had on LinkedIn this morning about, am I happy? Right. So yeah, that you can take a deep dive on that. I'll tell you the second thing then is for my own life. I'm a little conflicted on that right now. For the most part, my own life, for me personally, Felix, living a kick-ass life, right? I am finally where I need to be, doing the things that I want to do, and I am absolutely happy. But if anybody has seen my post from Friday, you also know that there's been some terrible things happening in my life recently. And so that is still in the back of my mind, and I haven't completely processed through that either. So am I happy today? Tuesday, March 5th. For the most part, I would say yes. But there's definitely events happening in my own personal life that you throw in some clouds out there. Let's put it that way.
So out of all the answers we've gotten, that may be the realest.
Yes.
Because that was a real answer. And I think a lot of that's the way we live life.
That is very true.
And you're not going to be happy every day, and that's okay. We got to live in those moments sometimes. But again, thank you so much for just coming on here, being so real, so raw. And guys, please connect with Felix if you are feeling like you might need a coach to break through. Maybe there's another story he can share that really connects or resonates with you. But again, don't hesitate to just reach out and talk to people. You just take a conversation. Again, we connected on a social Saturday, and here we are now. He's on the podcast, and again, we consider him a good friend of the show. He definitely is beating the drum that we like, where it's dig deeper and figure out the real problems that somebody's having. Don't get rid of the surface questions. We don't need to stay there anymore. Let's get deep and find out those questions that really are to the heart. So thank you again, seriously, for what you're doing, for taking the risk, like Coach said. Again, I know there's so many people in this journey that I've talked to, and from doing the podcast and stuff, that have shared this stage of life that they're just, it's again kind of a great awakening in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And so I just, if you need that guidance or that help, please share this with somebody who you think might connect or resonate with Felix's story, and it might give them some guidance in their next steps. But again, Coach, lead us out, and we'll wrap this out.
Actually, can I just summarize
absolutely.
that thing one quick, DJ? The one thing that I really want to say is, yes, we are only given one life, but we're not just given one chance. So you can always pivot. You can always make the change. Bet on yourself and make it happen.
Hey, drop the mic right there. Make the day count. The day matters, man. Let's go with that.
Yes, make it count, guys. Until Thursday, I can't wait to recap this with you, Coach. Thursday mornings, we'll recap the show. I can't wait to go over some of this stuff. So again, like and subscribe. Robin Hood Capitalist. Please share with a friend or family member who you think might be struggling in that same world. They might just need a coach. Please connect. But again, like Felix said, just pivot. That door doesn't mean that all the doors are closed. There's a lot more. Just keep searching for them. So Thursday, y'all, keep feeding the good wolf.
I'm always on the red eye. This time around, it's not even about getting paid. I'm just